Probably the first question for me is, why did you do it? Especially when you've lived in a home for how many years were you in the previous home?
Nearly 50 years.
And you built the home.
And it was very hard to part with it, but we really had no choice because it was literally falling apart. And we looked at shifting. From an economic point of view, it was probably more sense to sell this place and shift a bit further out of town, but we didn't want to. We liked the neighbourhood. We were able to keep most of our backyard, and so we decided that we'd knock it over and start again. And the first house was sustainable for a 1970s house. I figured we could do it much better, and so I started doing research for us.
I think back in the old days it was called common sense with the north facing, things like that. But as I said, as you know, it's listed to an entirely different level.
We've been in the house for just a little bit over 12 months now, and it's working really well. So I've done a check on the last 12 months of our budget in the previous house for power. We had gas, hot water storage, and we had gas cooking, and the rest was electricity. We had 1.6 kilowatt.
That was in the previous
In the
house.
previous house, we had 1.6 kilowatt solar system on the roof, and our total monthly account for power in the last 12 months for that house averaged out was $110 per month.
Including charges.
Including service charge. And with a new house with no solar panels on the roof yet, but with solar hot water and having gone totally electric, we're now paying $40 a month. It's proving to be very comfortable. We've never yet once turned on our booster for our hot water system. And last year, so the first year we shifted in, we decided to focus on making a garden. And so we actually lived in the house pretty much camping with very little furniture for the first 6 months. I had to make the curtains myself. I'm still getting around to doing all of that. But so through that first winter and half the first summer, we had no curtains whatsoever. So I remember you telling us that the house is only, it's a tool and it's only as good as the user. And so we broke every rule in the book during that first 12 months. But the house, even with no curtains, didn't get down to below, I think the lowest it ever got inside overnight was 17 degrees. And in summer, we went from very low 20s, so maybe 20, 21 overnight, up to 27 during the day on the really hot days. And in heat wave conditions, there were a couple of days where mid-afternoon it got to 30, but we have ceiling fans. Turn the ceiling fan on, it makes you feel 3 degrees cooler. And when we did live in the old house and I had this first cycle air conditioning, I had that set to 27 degrees, so we were comfortable.
What you've got to remember, of course, is Jandakot, which is our closest weather station, got 0.3.
So yes, it's a little bit colder here.
We're sitting here with t-shirts,
that's right.
etc. And interesting too, because we had this conversation earlier on. So at the moment, we have the sun coming in here. It's about just on 2 o'clock. So the sun's starting to go across. Every block has a limitation about its performance, and other things give limitations. But also we decided to keep the subdivisional block. So as a consequence, we lost space on the side for the driveway and parking for future. On a house of this size, you'd want around 70% of glass on the north side, and you probably have about, I would say, 45% of what should have been around 70%. So therefore, this is for winter. So therefore, your performance is winter. It's not bad considering. But also, when we looked at this table, of course, this table, when we worked out the chairs and the table where it sits, blocks out about 30% of the sun coming in this main area. On the floor, and it's 33.6, and the outside temperature is supposed to be 19 today. So 33.6 on the floor. The wall temperature will be the interesting one, because the true temperature of the room is 22.2, but the floor temperature is 33.4.
And we haven't got the dark tiles either.
No, no.
Which you
They're-
said.
We have got dark tiles. We have medium coloured tiles in the front of the house, but we went with the darker ones at the back.
And it's interesting because, again, perception of tiles, when you look at these tiles, with the sun coming in, they're a platinum look.
Yes.
But again, people look at dark tiles and say, oh no, too dark for the home. So it's a great, because the two have different opinions about it. That's how people are. When they see them with the sun coming in, they're amazed at how light they are.
Oh, absolutely. It's quite
So,
dramatic, the
yeah.
difference between...
So don't be afraid of dark tiles.
No.
Because they're not dark in winter, and in summer, when the sun's excluded, there's so much light in Perth bouncing around the room, it makes no difference.
Yes, no, we haven't had any issue at all with going with the dark tiles.
So what would be the temperature sort of basically out from the sun?
So behind us, out of the sun, it's 20.9 degrees. So therefore, where the heat comes in, it's going into the slab, conducting into the slab. It releases long wavelength back into the room, so going through. Some goes back in the floor, some goes into the walls, and convective heat sits up there, goes into the walls. So you've got a combination. So therefore, as we move through the home from north to south, you'll start having diminishing temperature. If we look at the southern side, we're in the dining area with the kitchen behind us and a lounge over the other side there. And so we look at over the other side, and you look at the wall on the other side of the room, so which is around about 6.5 metres away, 7
Yes.
metres away, it's 21.7.
Wow.
So
Which is-
therefore, it's still a comfortable temperature. over there.
Absolutely, yes.
So the ideal is to have 2 rooms deep, north to south. In this room, you're 2 rooms deep, and because we compress the house to make the money for the block available and to have a great garden as well, it means that you have a slight deficit in performance, although you probably don't see it that way because it performs pretty well for you. But from my point of view, I would expect on a day like today and the overall house, I would expect this area to be about another 2, maybe 2.5 degrees warmer. And so what we're going to do later on is we're going to move the table back a metre, which we have, we've got plenty of space to do it, take the chairs off that side, put them on this side, because it's a very big table which you don't use that much, and that will increase your performance in this area by changing the furniture. Just that 3 minutes worth of work will change, and you'll pick up around about, even though we'll increase this area by about 30%, you'll increase the performance and the heating in here probably around about 15 to 20%. So with summer, so the summer temperature, as you say, it got up to 30 at one stage with no drapes, but also no shading outside.
No.
Which we're going to have a chat about later on, because
Yes.
we're looking at putting the sail shades up for summer. So therefore, because in a spot like this, you've done a really good job of the native garden, because that breaks up that diffuse radiant heat, but you still get diffuse radiant heat, and you need to shade at least 3.5 metres away from the home. So you had no shading there, except the normal leaves, which don't give you much protection, if any at all, realistically.
No, so they were fine in the early part of summer because we had the sun right ahead. But as summer, that's why I had to get busy and it was very helpful to have those because we were able to pull those across, because as the sun, by February, mid-February, when it's getting really hot, the sun's starting to come in through the window. And so it was helpful to have the blinds to pull across during the day, but certainly the shade sails will help. They will make a big difference.
Just tell me, Griff, how much difference would it make? We've got security screening on here, which is actually the heavy duty screen. How much difference would that make also to...
In this area, those 2 security screens may be 5% in winter and no difference in summer.
And they're wonderful in summer, so that was one of the extra costs that we added on. We put security mesh instead of standard fly wire mesh, and in summer it's fantastic. So you designed us a tiny little window in the front of our lounge area, and we love that window anyway because we can be in the back garden and see straight through to the street. And but it's amazing, you only need this tiny little window and a bit of disruption in the direction of your airflow, and a larger
The
window
Fremantle doctor.
for the wind to
Straight
go
through.
out, and
Very
it cools it down wonderfully.
really important to understand that where the air comes in, you want a small opening. Where it goes out, a wider opening. Otherwise, you compress the air and you slow it through the home. So, no, really good point.
Yeah.
So, interesting what you said before, Wendy, about like you've kept the backyard, because a part of the brief was to make sure your block is still subdividable, so you can subdivide this and build at the back again.
Yes.
And so that meant you've got this nice, pot of money buried in the backyard.
$600,000 worth of vision.
Yeah, that's right. That's expensive. Isn't
We wanted to rebuild on the same block. We wanted to keep as much of the garden as we could, but we also wanted to get rid of all the lawn and put in a lot more natives. And the idea was that this house was to be as maintenance free as we could possibly make it, and allow our first house we thought was going to be our forever house. This one's definitely our forever house, and we love the fact that not only did you design it with sustainable design, but it's built to universal design. So there's a lot of easy things that will make it great for us to live in forever.
Yeah, ageing in place is a critical part of sustainable design from my point of view. So that we're not just allowing for a restrained carbon future, but we're also allowing for the spaces to open up and to give us access, and no trip points, wider doorways, flush thresholds to showers, walk-in showers, all of that. So and it's not just that as we age in place, it's considering everybody else in our community, as well as some young people say to me that, oh yeah, but a long way until I will probably move house by then. I said, what about your parents? What about your grandparents?
Sure. Yeah.
So therefore it's an inclusive idea, not an exclusive idea. The cost of it is very small if you considered in the original design. Sometimes almost impossible later on, or very expensive later on if it's not considered as a part of the original design. In the bathroom, even though you'd lose some sun, because we've got the bathroom set up so a low allergen, because low allergens are part of this with your area and the ensuite. So the sun comes in on the floor, and what's it like from a cleaning point of view?
For starters, the access is fantastic.
Yeah.
The sloping, again, works well. The glass cleaning is just a breeze.
And the floor, do you get much moisture staying in there with the sun?
No.
It's pretty good. It dries. It again, because the studio's in the way there,
Yes,
it doesn't
we do
dry
lose
quite
some.
as effectively as it would do otherwise. I don't think we're ever likely to have issues with mould because it does get nice and warm in there. It's about lifestyle, and I was brought up in a family where you make do and you recycle, and it was just part of life. And so all our furniture is pretty much all our furniture is recycled. It's come from salvage yards and op shops and old family items that have been handed down, and we've tried to keep some of the items from the old house and recycle those as well. And we managed to keep the studio, and they were going to knock down the studio, the original studio, external studio. It was attached to the bathroom wall, the laundry wall, and they were going to knock that down for us. And I said, no, leave it. And we've turned that into a backdrop for a little patio area. Artworks, being an artist, when I make artworks, I use available resources, and a lot of it's old recycled materials. And so building a house this way just completely suited. The fact that you suggested that we keep the block so that we could subdivide later if we wanted to, and therefore we've shifted the house 3 metres forward. And so what we've done is we've actually stolen the front verge, and that's become our front garden. And so we have the first thing we put in our garden, so we built the garden ourselves out the front, or all the new area that we have 3 more metres out the back and out the front. And we built that from the rock, so it's from bedrock. So
Great rock.
We have a lovely big moss rock that is big enough to sit on, and then we built the garden around that. But that sits right at the back of the garden, but that's actually as far forward as we could possibly put it, because that's where our original front verge started. And then we've taken the whole of the front verge and turned that into garden as well, which City of Melville is encouraging. So and it's surprising how many of the people in the suburb have stopped to chat to us whilst we've been doing it, and you know, maybe we might spark an idea of and it's about getting the birds, encouraging the birds, providing avenues. We've got parks nearby, and we're hoping that our yard with 200 odd natives in it is a haven where the birds can stop off and help provide those corridors that's important for the wildlife.
No, that's great. So, thanks.
Well,
Well,
thank
thank
you.
you.
Thank you.
My pleasure.